Denise Crosby, and you're listening to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast.
Hey, it's Tom Matthews from Return of the Living Dead and Friday the 13th, Part 6, to name a few, and you're listening to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast. Enjoy.
Hey guys, Tyler Mann here, and you're listening to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast.
Hi, I'm John Russo, screenwriter of Night of the Living Dead. Welcome to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast. Enjoy.
Let me introduce myself. I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.
What up, mean militia? I'm Mean Joe Grizzly, and when I'm not getting loose with the juice or hanging out with the ghosts with the most, I'm at the Grizzly Cave, watching movies, reading comics, listening to metal, and of course, crushing beers. And I am back with my review of the long-awaited sequel to the absolute must-see spooky classic that is decades in the making. And I am, of course, talking about Beetlejuice. But before we get started, please make sure to follow me on all social media pages, subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel by clicking the links in the description below. By doing that, you'll help me continue to talk about all forms of badassery. So was Beetlejuice worth the multi-decade wait, or are we in need of an exorcism after the crushing disappointment? Let's talk about it. This is Grizzly Grade Reviews. When a series of events brings Lydia Dietz and her daughter Astrid back to Winter River, it puts them on the road to a reunion with the ghost with the most, Beetlejuice. So when this was announced a couple of years ago after being in development hell for a while, I was semi-interested, but I expected it to be this soulless cash grab. And then we got the trailer. And that featured a new interesting villain and seemingly a different direction, and not just this rehash update of the original. And for the most part, it was. So starting out, I felt that the bare bones plot and framing of this story was a good way to bring us back into this world. They managed to do a good job of bringing us all up to speed in a very simple way that doesn't take the majority of the movie to do so. The choices of making Lydia this paranormal investigator celebrity in particular made sense to me, and honestly, it fits perfectly. Now to address the elephant in the room, the way that they dealt with the Jeffrey Jones situation to me was great, and using it as the catalyst of the story was a very smart way to do it. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about or who that is, Jeffrey Jones was an actor. In the first movie, he played Lydia's dad, and he is a disgusting human being that either engaged in lewd acts with a child or was caught looking at lewd material of a child. So yeah, he's a piece of shit. So the way that they kind of wrote his character out, or how they moved on from that or reconciled him not being in the movie, they killed him off. And this isn't really a spoiler. This happens in like the first 5 minutes of the movie, so I'm not ruining anything. So he died, and that is the catalyst for all the events in the movie really that take place. So I thought it was good how they killed him off, and even how they kept him in quote ghost form was a creative way, because they did so without giving this guy any kind of publicity whatsoever. Like, they gave him no screen time. They even modified images of him so it didn't quite look like him. I really respected the fact that they found a smart and tasteful way of including that character without including that piece of shit that was the actor. So kudos to Burton and company for taking care of that and not giving that asshole any kind of spotlight. I like how this movie doesn't depend on nostalgia to be its main grab. Like, this movie stands on its own. Sure, there's a lot of legacy characters that are in this movie, like Catherine O'Hara, and obviously Winona Ryder, and Michael Keaton, but they did a good job of kind of establishing that was this movie, this is this movie, and we're not going to hit a lot of the same beats, and I appreciated that. And it even gets down to the tone and some of the themes that it explores that definitely separates it from what the original was. And I really appreciated that because, again, most of these legacy sequels, they're just cash grabs. They rely on nostalgia to get people into seats, and then you get there and it's like a rehashed version of the first movie. This movie is not that. Michael Keaton is great. And he steps right back into the role of Beetlejuice like he never left, and he doesn't phone it in at all. He's just having a blast, and it says a lot about Michael Keaton as an actor when he can go back to these characters 30 years later and just act like he never left. Like he just doesn't miss a beat, and especially in this one, now this is the second time he's played Beetlejuice, and this time they gave him more screen time, so he got to chew on the scenery a little bit more, and I really appreciate his passion for these characters. Between this and him reprising the role as Batman in The Flash, it just hits you in the feels a little bit, because if you grew up with these movies, you appreciate this guy so much for how much passion he pours into these roles and how he treats them all as they are important. He just doesn't go in and phone it in for a paycheck. I find that to be something that is very commendable. And also, I like how we got this simple but effective origin for Beetlejuice. We've only ever gotten this bullshit nonsense rambling from Beetlejuice about himself that it gives just little hints, but we never got a definitive origin for the ghost with the most. And in this one, we get one, and it is surprisingly simple and even more surprisingly effective. And I appreciated it so much that we didn't get this real convoluted background of this character that everyone seems to latch on to and everyone likes. I love the atmosphere that this movie has, especially the fall/Halloween vibes it's oozing throughout most of the movie. It takes place over a few days that lead up to the climax on Halloween, and it just gives you all those cozy fall Halloween vibes that just gets you in the mood. So this is definitely a movie that can probably go into everyone's rotation around Halloween time. And it goes hand in hand with the tone of the movie that, to me, has this great balance of fantastical, whimsical, comedic, and darkness without going too heavy into either. In contrast to the first film that leaned way into the whimsical comedy, this one just gives us these perfectly blended amounts of fantasy with quirky comedy that is also like laced in this darkness, which is extremely hard to do, and they somehow pull it off. And you heard me say darkness because this movie is not, it's borderline not a kid's movie. There's some dark stuff being explored here, and there are moments where the movie kind of takes this dark direction that you kind of aren't expecting. It surprisingly has some violence in it, nothing too extreme, but there's some gory stuff in this movie, and there's some like darker themes is the best way that I could describe it without going too much into it. I was kind of surprised by that. It's PG-13, and I don't think it's by any means pushing that boundary, but it's getting what it needs to get out of that PG-13 rating. And going along with all the tones and themes, the comedy was pretty decent too. In fact, a lot of it comes from Catherine O'Hara. Like, everyone knows her. If you've ever watched Schitt's Creek or any of the other movies she's been in, like the original Beetlejuice or Home Alone, she's kind of known for being the over-the-top frantic lady, and this role, she is no different. She's just this dingbat like she was in the first movie, but even more so in this one. And I'm not a fan of Schitt's Creek, but my wife watches Schitt's Creek, and I've had to watch it with her. And there was a moment in this movie where we're kind of treated to an Easter egg for Schitt's Creek, and I thought that was actually pretty interesting, and it was pretty funny too. So a lot of the comedy comes by way of her and Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice has some one-liners in this movie that are freaking hilarious, that have me laughing out loud. I really enjoyed the comedic aspect, because it wasn't this corny, try too hard comedy like a lot of these newer movies like to do nowadays. So I appreciated that too. And of course, to go with the whimsical and dark tones that the movie is trying to go with, they got Danny Elfman to do the score. And as always, anytime Danny Elfman is involved in the score of a film, you know that it's going to be great. And with it being Tim Burton, at this point, it's a given that both of them are going to work together. The dude is a legend. And finally, one of the big things that I really, really, really appreciated was their choice to use mostly practical effects and a little bit of CGI to enhance them. I particularly liked how they brought back the stop motion that was so prominent in the original, like with the sandworms of Saturn and stuff like that. I loved that they brought that back and kept it kind of that primitive claymation, stop motion animation that we've seen back in those movies in the 80s. I really appreciated that aspect of it. And there's a lot of scenes in the movie where there's some gore and there's some things that happen that just look really cool because they're done practically. Whereas if they were done digitally, it would not have worked at all. So you know me, anytime we can get majority practical effects, I'm going to champion that. I'm going to be happy about it. So all that stuff was great about it, but I did have some issues that I want to talk about. First off being Winona Ryder and Jenna Ortega were written very poorly, and they were very underutilized. It was kind of shocking to actually see. Winona Ryder's character of Lydia she's the main character of the story, but the way she is written, it doesn't make any sense. Her progression from goth, angsty teen to submissive and passive adult just seems really out of place, even despite the circumstances of why she is like this now. I liked how they made her this like paranormal investigator celebrity. That works. But when you actually get down to the real Lydia and who she is, she's like this strange passive jellyfish. And yeah, she might not have been super confrontational when she was like in her teen version, but I just don't see her as an adult being like this, even despite the circumstances of why she is the way she is. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in those circumstances that at times get very contradictory, and I don't really understand how they kind of didn't reconcile that, or how they didn't put that together better than what they did. Jenna Ortega is just portrayed as this angsty, bitchy teen that is constantly disrespectful to her mother, Lydia, and just about the entire movie with little to nothing else. She doesn't really give us this emotional performance that we're used to seeing from this actress, and because she's the way that she's written, it just makes her performance seem real flat and phoned in. And we know by her other performances that she is not that type of actress. She is very passionate about the roles she plays, and she usually gives 110%, but because of the way that she's written, she just is, it's just like, it's not quite this bad, but it's kind of like how in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake that with Rooney Mara playing Nancy, how she was just there and you just got no emotional performance from her. It kind of felt that way, but not to that extreme, obviously. But both of these actresses have proven that they are capable and even exceedingly good actresses, but they are victim to this subpar writing of these characters. Like, I don't know who wrote these characters like this, but they just wrote them very strangely, and it just didn't make any sense. It's kind of like the people who wrote this didn't understand grief, or they didn't have any prior knowledge to the character of Lydia, so they kind of just wrote these cliche versions of these characters. I know it doesn't make much sense, but it's really hard for me to explain because it's the way that they're written, it just didn't make any sense. And probably my biggest problem is they put way too much stuff in this movie, to the point that it doesn't make the movie incoherent, but it does give it a lot of issues. Like, there are 5 major plot points going on at different points in the movie, and only 2 truly gets resolved in a decent way. You have the one storyline that I thought was the most interesting, which involved Beetlejuice's ex-wife Dolores hunting him down throughout the movie, but instead of it feeling like this big deal, it's kind of just there looming in the background, and it eventually gets resolved, but in this quick and very, very anticlimactic way, which is a shame because to me, she was a great character, and I was really anxious to see them explore that, and they didn't. They kind of just introduced this really cool character in a very cool way, and then she just flashed on the screen every other time throughout like each segment of the movie, and it was very unsatisfying. Stuff just seems thrown in throughout the movie, and it just feels like it was done just to do it. And I'll say that they're all decent or good plot points, but not all of them needed to be explored in one movie. They just weigh the movie down and makes it feel rushed and overstuffed. And this is a problem that a lot of these legacy sequels have. It's like they're worried that they won't get another chance to like explore what they want, so they have to get everything in there. And this is very similar to how they tried to do too much in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Like, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire would have been great if they could have trimmed out 2 or 3 of their plot points. There was a couple of plot points that made no sense whatsoever and did not push the story forward. They were just there, or they were there and they were a lazy way to push the story forward. Now, I want y'all to understand that I enjoyed Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and I enjoyed Beetlejuice, but if I could only imagine how much better those movies would have been if they would have just took 2 of those plots and worked on them, or even 1 of those plots and just focused on them, and then seen what kind of movie we would have gotten. It definitely makes me curious to see if that's something that Tim Burton wanted to do, or if it's something that the studio wanted to do. 9 times out of 10, it's the studio. So I'm going to go with that. That's my headcanon on this. But despite those issues, I found Beetlejuice to be a good legacy sequel that, if done properly, can yield more out of this universe if they wanted to explore it. And at the very least, the great practical effects, the great atmosphere, and the amazing performance by Michael Keaton are definitely worth the watch and entertaining as hell. So with all that being said, Beetlejuice gets a 3.75 out of 5 and is Grizzly grade guaranteed. Go on theaters, check it out, support this movie. It'll get you in the spooky season mood. And that does it for another episode. Make sure you click the links in the description and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and also follow the YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the content I'm bringing your way. Also, make sure you check out Carl Casey at Whitebat Audio. He is a synthwave master, and his music is being used throughout each episode, so check him out on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube. Spooky season is almost here. We were in pre-spooky season in my household. We're starting to decorate. There's lots of movies getting pulled off the shelf that are going to be on our watch list. I am very excited about this time of the year. It's always my favorite time of the year. So stay tuned for content that's going to be related to that coming soon, mainly in the month of October. As far as some other updates on the channel, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to bring y'all episodes of Mean Joe video. So far, I haven't really figured out a way to get that to y'all without me getting some kind of copyright block, because for some reason YouTube will come after me over a video that shows images from a trailer or scenes from a movie, but it won't go after these large creators that have millions of followers who do the exact same thing. One in particular shows the entire fucking movie, but somehow they get off scot-free. Doesn't make any sense to me. So that's very frustrating, but I'm trying to figure out a way to do this without just scrapping the segment altogether, because I enjoy doing those retro reviews for y'all, and it's something that I'm very passionate about because those movies mean a lot to me. So I'm going to be trying to resolve that as soon as I possibly can, because if I can resolve it quickly, I've got one that I'm definitely going to be bringing y'all at the beginning of October. So stay tuned for that. We got the Grizzly Guide return this week for part 2 of The Crow. I hope that y'all are enjoying that story, because I'm definitely enjoying revisiting it. So stay tuned for that. That one's dropping on Wednesday. We got a couple other segments that I'm still working on. I am trying desperately to get another Monster Manual episode out. It's been a challenge to say the least. Those episodes just take a lot of time, guys. And I may have bitten off more than I can chew by trying to bring back all these other segments. I got an idea for that's going to probably change at the beginning of next year, because I'm starting to niche down on a lot of things. So there might be something coming at the beginning of next year where certain things get separate channels and stuff like that. It's not set in stone. It's just something that I'm kicking around right now. But if you don't mind, please continue to be patient with me, because I really want to get another Monster Manual episode out, because I really enjoy doing those. I just don't want to bring y'all this inferior product. I want to give y'all the best that I can give you at the moment, without like taking forever to do it. So stay tuned. I'm going to do my best to get one out as soon as I possibly can. Heavy history is still something that I want to do. I'm just not having the time to do it right now. So I hope y'all have been enjoying all the little Mean Joe Metal minutes. I've enjoyed throwing those together for y'all. I know they're short little minute segments, but hopefully it's turned y'all on to some legendary albums. So stay tuned for more of those as well. Got I believe Speak No Evil coming out next. I think that's the next one that's coming out. That one looks like it's going to be interesting. It's not something I can say that I'm overly excited about, but stay tuned for the review on that. That'll be out sometime next week. But until next time, remember, I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.